Kia ora mai tātou, no mai piki mai rā. Choice that you're here. Choice that we are here. And choice that we're here with Lizzie. Maybe we can start the evening with a karakia, just to land ourselves in the right place and out of acknowledgement of tangata whenua in our area. Ka rangatapu te Māori tū te whiwhi ai waho puritia mai waho tēnei te Māori ka whakakiki, tēnei te Māori ka whakakaka. He Māori kei runga, he Māori kei raro, ka pō kei waho kei ki te whaiao ki te ao marama, ti hei Māori orea. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a tātou ki ngā karangatanga mā te motu, puta noa, o te tai tukarau, puta noa, I whangārei te ringa parawa. Ngā mihi, ngā mihi, ngā mihi. Ngā mihi a tātou ko tai mai runga te karanga te rā. He karanga tapu tēnei. Choice that we're here, acknowledging those who have passed, and those of us who are the living face of those who have passed, that we are here and prepared to share ideas and hopes and dreams for the justice in Aotearoa. So, no mai, piki mai rā, choice that we're here. Kia ora mai tātou. Kia ora ngai.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi mai oha ki a koutou. Tōtahi mihi ki a koe Tim o tō karakia I tēnei pō. Thank you for opening our time together with karakia this evening, Tim. And I echo the sentiments that Tim gave in acknowledging the people of this whenua, all of the hapu and iwi of Whangārei te Renga Parawa, an acknowledgement to Parihaka, te maunga, hātia, te awa, me ngā, all of the sacred places for the people here of Whangārei, the people of Whangārei who never ceded sovereignty. We acknowledge them and their whenua. Ko wai ahau, he Pākehā ahau, e whānau mai I Whangārei, e tipu aki au I Waipu Cove, e noho ana au I Whangārei. I was born just down the road, grew up just over the harbour, over the ocean at Waipu Cove, and actually now live where I can see Waipu Cove in a little magical place in Whangārei Heads. So I am very much a local with English and Scottish ancestry, Pākehā, and my name is Ngaire Rae, and I'm going to be your MC for tonight. I'm a member of Network Waitangi Whangārei and have been for about 30 years or so. I can date that because my daughter is now 31 and I was still breastfeeding her when, and I took her to one of the first protests. One of my first protests was against the foreshore and seabed confiscation, or was it the no fiscal envelope? One of those anyway, up in Waitangi, and there's a beautiful photo of my baby asleep behind the protest placard up in Waitangi. So that's my little introduction into Network Waitangi, and I've been a on and off member ever since. Very proud to be a part of Network Waitangi. We have been going here in Whangārei for about 40 years. We started in 1985 as part of Project Waitangi, and it was about being supported to encourage people to think about the treaty in the lead up to the 150th commemoration of Te Tiriti in 1990. But we also grew out of the anti-apartheid, anti-racist movement when tangata whenua actually challenged us as Pākehā to say, what are you doing about the racism in this country? Many of us were lucky enough to have known the Reverend Joan Cook, who was a mentor and a teacher to several of us, and she definitely held our kaupapa together, and we are committed to that kaupapa as we go forward. And our kaupapa is about providing information, education and support to implement Te Tiriti. So this Treaty and Me series, of which this is the first one for this block of 4, is a new way of that Network Waitangi has conceived to bring education and information to people. So we are really about trying to provide new and challenging ideas. One of the other things that we do and have done consistently over decades is Te Tiriti workshops. So we've got 2 workshops coming up. The details are on the back there, but we've got one on the 22nd of August. It's a Friday, so that's coming up. You can still register, and again, there's another one in November. What we're going to do, how we're going to run this is the amazing speaker will speak to us for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to have a little break and encourage people to write your questions on a piece of paper, and we've got paper and pen, and we will hand those out amongst people. We will not be taking questions from the floor, and this is a process that we did at our series last year, and we're carrying it through. And the rationale for this is that quite often the shyest person in the room won't be the person to stand up and ask a question, but they might have a really insightful question. So this is a process of being able to encourage everybody to participate in asking questions, and it also gives us a chance to read the questions first, allow the speaker to have some time to consider those before answering. So we'll do Q&A for about 30 minutes, and then we'll wrap up, and there's more kai and more opportunities to chat. Well, we know that works, don't we? That's great. So please feel free to hang around afterwards. We have one of the things, before I introduce Elizabeth, we have a community code that we just want to remind people about, and that, you know, we are curious, open and respectful. We speak from our own experience. We make space and we take space. So, you know, sometimes, you know, people like me, it's easy to, you know, get up here and have a chat. But for others, we need to, you know, make some space for their participation. And nobody knows everything. Anyway, without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Ann Cook, or Lizzie, as she's known to her friends, who's a writer, a thinker, and a social critic with a passion for challenging complacency. I like that. 6th generation non-Māori with English, Irish, Catholic and Welsh ancestry. She was born and grew up in Whangārei before settling mostly in Aotearoa. So Elizabeth had a diverse career, including performing and releasing original music. So she's performed live as a singer, songwriter and an actor, and has taught te reo Māori and drama. And then to add to that, in 2021 she completed a PhD in sociology and extended her lifelong engagement with critical thinking into non-fiction writing. And her book, Unsettled Bliss, was published just this year, and there's a few copies of Elizabeth's book in the back there. And her work examines how everyday behaviours reinforce harmful social and economic systems, and she's particularly interested in deconstructing language, power and privilege. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lizzie. I'm already your mate, and really looking forward to your talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi kia koutou, Māori ora ki te rangi, Māori ora ki te whenua, Māori ora ki te ao whānui. Well, my mihi's sort of already been done for me, really, so I just want to thank you all, no mai tauti mai, for coming here. So maybe if you have a pen or paper or you want to take notes on your phone, if there's anything you don't understand what I mean, please scribble down a question. But before I start, I would like to ngā mihi nui ki te tōputanga Network Waitangi Whangārei for tēnei hui i te pōnei. Ngā mihi nui ki a Yeta for te kaiwhakahaere, ki te kai karakia Tim, ki te kai kōrero Ngaire, and ki te kai pātai Agnes, who will be up here later on the stage. So ngā mihi kia koutou hoki mō tō haerenga ki te pōnei. I am here this evening to share this journey with you, a journey about being uncomfortable. So let's all be uncomfortable together. If I should start coughing or spluttering, I had COVID a few weeks ago. I'm well past it now, but it seems to be lingering on at the back of my throat, and that's why I've got this rather deep voice at the moment. Usually I sort of speak more up there, but it's down here at the moment. So, why do I harp on about white people? Because as a political voting bloc, that's how we operate, a unity in whiteness. Our identity is defined by our political actions, and our political actions are those of white settlers in someone else's country. In the English-speaking colonial world, we share these traits with white settlers in Australia and Canada. Our political actions and our identity is about power over others. If we are not the dominators, we feel challenged about our identity, because what is left? That is our raison d'etre, is being the boss. That is why I will talk about white supremacy. The evidence I use to back my arguments, it's all in my book. And that's for sale at the back of the room, $35. $5 goes to Network Waitangi. So my book is a guide for change, for white people to change. It's probably a good read for Māori because they know all the stuff that's in it, but my book is about change that is about inclusiveness, not being the boss over others, and not being the boss over others as to how this change might be done, or ought to be done. If you read my E Tangata article about my publication, the responses were quite interesting. And there was definitely a knee-jerk response from one writer, Jeff somebody, who writes for Daily Blog, who knew how change ought to be done, and he laid it down quite firmly in his response to me. He didn't agree with me at all. For change to happen, we must not succumb to fear. Fear blocks us. Fear pulls us away from empathy and engagement with different others, so that we do not hear their voices. The homeless, the poor, ex-prisoners, neighbours, those new settlers just down the road, those people that a lot of us call immigrants, but they're actually new settlers. We're the old settlers. Well, I am. I'm 6th generation. But they are new settlers. That's how I view them. We must ask ourselves, are we sharing this planet humanely? Or are we participating in the vilification of others to enable their isolation and the silencing of their voices and concerns? Gaza is us. These could be our babies, our children, our husbands and wives, the elderly, the infirm. We allow Gaza to happen. We know about this genocide, but we do not act. Our government does not act sufficiently. We allow abuse in state care to continue. Ignorance is no longer an excuse after the Royal Commission of Inquiry. Action is the remedy. It is action and change that my book calls on you to facilitate in your daily lives. Getting back to being uncomfortable, Māori have always been uncomfortable since we arrived because they are not listened to and white settlers ride roughshod over them in their own country. It's time for us colonists to face the music, to look real hard at our bullying, our silencing, our control of economic, social and political spaces. And also that strange space we go to about being nice. Remember the defensiveness of the woman in the coalition about the C word that they were called by Andrea Vance, a journalist. The conversation became about how upset they were, rather than about the fact that they were traitors to women's pay parity. Just because Māori, like women, are more visible now, does not mean their struggles for autonomy and equity are over. When I speak to random strangers, the anger of Māori is raised by them. Well, wouldn't you be angry after 190 years of continual put down and land grab? Or they say that Māori have to be consulted and we have to hear their opinions. Yes, we have a partnership called Te Tiriti and their voice is required. And by the way, this treaty was for the protection of both sides, initiated by Māori because they were fed up with Pākehā behaviour at Kurorareka and elsewhere in Aotearoa. Many white people consider the Treaty of Waitangi to be no longer relevant. This would suit them very well for their material gain purposes, that it was not relevant. And as we see, Te Tiriti is under threat in this current political climate, focused on property, not people. I talk about the pursuit, the private pursuit of bliss that produces cruelty. This refers to one's personal bliss and achievements occurring at great cost or detriment to others or the environment, where personal bliss is not about any shared greater good for the community. And I first came across this phrase, the private pursuit of bliss produces cruelty, in the novel, in a critique of the novel by Nabokov, the Russian writer who relocated to the USA, his book Lolita, where the pedophile convinces you, the reader, that he is right and that his view, his exploitation of this young girl and her mother is, by the by, that he's got all his reasons. And as someone said tonight, I've got the word solipsism in my book, which is that is what this is about. It's about where you're just seeing yourself. The world is only real according to what you know about yourself. And this private pursuit of bliss produces cruelty was taken up by Judith Sklar, a Latvian-American theorist, political theorist. And she considers cruelty the worst vice. And I talk about her interaction with ideas around the vices. And she says that's the only way. We can only look at what we're doing wrong in order to change properly. If we look at our virtues, tick, 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 oh, we're doing quite well, aren't we? You know, everything's nice. If we look at our vices, then we see what's not working. What's not working? Why is it not working? So she considers looking at our vices a very important strategy in change. There are many New Zealanders, and this is another example of cruelty, there are many New Zealanders who would have preferred the borders to be kept open during the COVID-19 pandemic for their own material gain reasons. And they do not care that many more people would have died because they were elderly or health compromised. Another example is the white settler construction of English farmland that has exploited and continues to exploit the landscape of Aotearoa with grass and exotic trees, and the draining of most of the swamps in Aotearoa, which were abundant food cupboards for Māori cuisine. To embrace te tiriti means giving up our bliss of ignorance about the past and about the present. By challenging our personal bliss and by examining our private pursuits, we need to ask, do these pursuits concur with a public good? Flippantly, I ask, does wanting a helipad show respect for our neighbourhood? In Whangārei, I understand there are 4 horsemen of the apocalypse who are land banking and stymieing innovative central city growth. Building one's material wealth is often a cruel practice of exploitation and self-interest. And it's not about the public good. The streets of central Whangārei showed me that today and yesterday. I talk about white supremacy. No, it is not just skinheads running violently amok. White supremacy is a widespread structure that we are part of, that underpins our everyday organisation and practices, by which we sideline Māori concerns, as was recently done about bowel cancer screening. The age for free screening does not fit with the earlier onset of bowel cancer experienced by Māori. And I'm not talking about any other sectors that it is an issue for. This is not an isolated example of failed services to a particular sector of the population. New Zealand's old age pension, New Zealand superannuation, has been theoretically available to Māori since 1898. Yet, there was historical discrimination in its application and payment, with Māori often receiving lower amounts, not to mention nothing. This discrimination persisted until 1945, despite Labour's claims of equality and the full participation of Māori in World War II. So many young men schooled in high knowledge at wānanga were lost in World War II. Ngāti Porou lost many of their leaders, their young leaders, in World War II, not to mention other tribal areas. It was argued that Māori pensioners and war veterans lived communally, so they did not need a full pension or balloted farmland upon their return from war. Yet, they were struggling to survive on the remnants of land they were left with after confiscations, native land court shenanigans, and white government laws. We have always had white politicians who have made decisions that set up obstacles for Māori. 190 years of it. However, even if there is white empathy, it can sometimes be performative rather than real. By this I mean wearing pounamu, celebrating matariki, and saying a karakia are sometimes performances of inclusiveness. But deeper change is required. Māori have been forced to be bicultural in a white-dominated society. However, too few Pākehā are bicultural and te reo fluent. For some of us, the te reo journey is a head-banging journey. I have been at it for years and I continue to persevere because language is the doorway to the culture. Real change means using the white vote differently, that we cease obstructing Māori participation in governance, that we stop and think before we offer public opinion drenched in white ideology. Commitment to Māori having autonomy means that you are no longer trying to be the boss of how things get done, that you action a shared environment that is negotiated through consultation, that the rules are not set by only white people or white government, which was the whole thing that was trying to be done recently by the government. Again, they were trying to set the rules of how this should be done. No consultation. In 1835, Māori created a trading flag for Aotearoa. It was required for their ships to be offloaded at ports overseas. Why is that flag not still the flag of Aotearoa? Was that a Māori decision? The Declaration of Independence flag was not a coloniser's flag. This is the kind of information and research that I consider to be necessary for any public discussion if a flag change is suggested. I talk about whiteness and our white participation in the ideology of whiteness. As we see in Parliament and in the general population, different others who are not white may also support the ideology of whiteness, participate in it and uphold it. We just have to look at two leaders in the coalition government. They uphold a white system. They uphold white domination. They think the white way is how everybody should be. They act out an acquisitive, material property-focused white world view. They employ a white lens to issues. It is important to understand what is meant by a white lens or a Māori lens, a white worldview or a Māori worldview. Nevertheless, I want to keep the focus on us, white people, and our tentacle-reaching organisational structures, and not get sidetracked by the behaviour of different others who want us all to be like white people. So I quote from my book, page 21, and I say the numbers in case you want to write it down, go look it up. There is not a Māori problem, rather there is a white people problem. This is because of the evidence I have assembled in my book as to the continuous petitioning by Māori across 190 years, reflecting their dissatisfaction with the obstacles they encounter at the hands of white people. White people are responsible for the symptoms of colonisation, the incarcerations, the poverty, the addictions, the violence exhibited by indigenous populations. The same stuff it's the same here, it's the same in Australia, it's the same in Canada, the same in South Africa. It's the same wherever there has been colonisation. White people, and the state of the indigenous people. White people, and I'm not saying that there aren't, that all Māori are poor, or all Māori are addicted, or all Māori are violent, or whatever. It's that there are too many of them at that end of the scale, and there shouldn't be that many of them at that end of the scale. So why is there that many of them at that end of the scale? White people continue to inflict oppression upon Māori and Aotearoa. It's not something that happened in the past, it's not an event, it's a structure, and it continues. Silly statements come from people like a Māori elite. This is resentment of the Māori middle class, that these people whom we consider inferior are rising above themselves, that they have opinions and power because they are educated, activist, informed, and unapologetic. So, if white people are the problem, then white people need a pragmatic approach to changing this. White people have to deal with their wanting others to conform to their white way. So we must examine this situation and work out How do we fix it practically? What are the issues? What do we need to change? Then we act for change. But so often, when identified as white people get defensive and in a really predictable, and for me, really boring way, they forget. Say that again. So often, when identified as white people get defensive in a really predictable, and for me, a very boring way. Forget about being defensive. Treat being identified as white as being a wake-up call. Why are you being called white? Why? What does this mean? So instead of getting upset, look into it. What is the issue? Focus on the issue. Okay, so let's use an example and deal with it pragmatically. You are a control freak in your marriage. You need to face up to your behaviour. Do something about it. This microcosm of domestic life is no different to the macrocosm of the wider social and political world. What we are acting out in private and what we act out in the public domain. Pākehā are control freaks, socially and economically. Aaron Smale, who did a lot of work, journalism, on abuse in state care, he presented the state as, well, he may not have said paedophile, that might have been me, but he presented the state as a psychopath in terms of its interaction with those who are incarcerated. And I think it's really important that we look at that. What does that mean in a domestic relationship where you don't have consent, where you're acting and you think your way is okay, as we get back to the Nabokov writing, the solipsism, the focus on just you. So Pākehā are control freaks, socially and economically. Bullying and scapegoating by Pākehā is rife in our society. And I haven't even got started on misogyny, the abuse of women. So what does change mean for white people? Well, I'm suggesting it means taking responsibility. I am part of this. I suggest it means self-reflection. What could I do differently? I suggest it means inclusive solutions. The things you and I, we might not agree on everything, but what is it that we agree on? What is it that we have in common, and where can we go from here? And these things are in short supply in the current political environment. And for me, the personal is also political. The microcosm, domestic lives, and the macrocosm, the wider social world. And in talking about conflict, there is a writer that I just want to read this A1 generated information about, Chantal Mouffe. She's from Belgium, she's a political theorist. And she focuses on transforming enemies into what she calls adversaries. I know some people don't like that word, adversaries, but she talks about it within a democratic framework rather than attempting to eliminate conflict entirely. She argues that while antagonism, the friend-enemy distinction, is inherent in politics, it can be channeled into what she has named as being agonism, where conflicting parties recognise each other's legitimacy as adversaries, even while disagreeing. This approach emphasises the importance of providing democratic spaces for conflict and passion to be expressed. And I think this is what is done on marae. You know, people get up and they speak, and there's really impassioned, conflicting stuff happening. And very often it goes to a place of consensus. And so this has been a real education for me, that I stopped seeing, it's very hard, isn't it? I stopped seeing those others as my enemies and I actually engage, and I actually try and find common ground, and yeah, so it's a really big challenge. So, the sidelining of the Māori voice, the obstacles to Māori autonomy that are perpetrated by white-dominated organisation is what I write about in Unsettled Bliss, Whiteness in Aotearoa. No publisher in Aotearoa would publish this book for me. So I paid to have it published through Mary Egan Publishing. There is a voodoo in the title word, whiteness, which means pain, discomfort, having to talk about racism issues in a mature way without getting defensive. White people are generally not good at this approach, and I know that from my own personal experience. As time goes by, I am curious about which white-dominated media review my book and which media did not even answer my publicist. So you can imagine the platform they didn't answer my publicist. What's his name? Sean Plunkett. Yeah. So that's one. But there's a few others that are a bit of a surprise, actually. Yeah, why? Why haven't they engaged? This book is specifically relevant to the political crisis of whiteness in Aotearoa, exemplified by this coalition government. With this page 23 quote, I respond to white fragility, pointing out the positioning of a dominant Pākehā majority and the application of their power is not hate speech. It is identifying cruelty. It is about establishing a clear framework for acceptable and unacceptable politics in order to make Aotearoa a better place for all inhabitants. There is a majority of white people in Aotearoa who unwittingly and with so little self-reflection subscribe to whiteness. Anything that is not part of their reality is dismissed as inconsequential, impinging on their complacency and their peace of mind. Two quotes from page 26. Whiteness is white people as individuals, as a group, as systems and institutions that take their power and identity for granted, as natural, as the universal norm. This is how everyone should be. This is the best way to be. Different others are the exception. Whiteness centralises the white South, around which there are all those other ethnic identities, but the white South, and centres upon the white South no matter the circumstances. Prioritising and centralising the white viewpoint is not the marginal thinking of just a few. When white or whiteness is mentioned, white people feel uncomfortable. Although I've said it so often now, I'm beginning to feel less uncomfortable about saying it. It's sort of become quite factual for me. But initially I went, oh, shall I introduce it into the conversation? What will be the reaction? So there's, I've gone through all those stages with using the word white. And decisions had to be made in writing my thesis as to, what I said, how I said it. White people steer the discussion to their discomfort rather than discussing the issue, the obstacle for Māori in which they participate. That might be the issue. But instead of talking about that, they talk about, I feel really, really victimised as a white person. So, yeah. However, this book that I've written and my approach is not a personal attack on any one white individual. The challenge to any white individual is to take responsibility, to become awake and activated about what is a widespread systemic issue, the system in which we are all embedded, the so-called norm that we take for granted in which we participate. So when the word New Zealander comes up, most people see a Pākehā New Zealander, a white New Zealander. So it's really interesting that those assumptions about the national identity. Guilt has no place here. Don't waste anyone's time with white guilt about the history of Aotearoa. Guilt is just a frozen rabbit in the headlights. And it's also kind of turning yourself into the victim. Hello, no, you're not the victim. The victims we're talking about are over here, and this is the issues that we need to discuss. Yeah, no, be quiet. This is what we need to discuss, and this is what we need to sort out. So what is required is action. We must see the lies and myths used every day about what is deemed to be a rightful social position and a rightful power, with claims such as the trickle-down effect from wealth. Really, the current economy serves the obscenely wealthy, and those in poverty are increasing. The meritocracy myth, that if you work hard, you'll get what you want. Well, tell that to all the female care workers facing pay parity barriers. And this one, we are all equal. This is an ideal, not a reality. Significant differences exist for ethnic and cultural reasons, for women and for the differently abled, that are different to the white norm that remains embedded in patriarchy. I mean, look at all those women in Parliament who support the patriarchy and whiteness, who undermine women and Māori. The feisty hana Rāwhiti Maipi Clark and the haka are to be celebrated as valid Māori action and comment. The response of our white-dominated Parliament was racist and displayed the domination of whiteness. I found it shocking that this response by Parliament received outspoken support from the white public and their allies in whiteness. One thing I am not going to talk much about is capitalism, because, like white fragility is a response to the word white, many people react to discussion about capitalism with a knee-jerk response that you must be a communist, as though there are only two economic ways to be in the world. My book clarifies how we participate in a capitalist structure, just as we participate in a white supremacist structure, willing or not. It's around us. We're embedded in it. Domination, exploitation, slavery, and incarceration are the tools of these structures. The claims of the trickle-down of wealth, the meritocracy, hard work myth, and that we are all equal, but no equity is given to those who need it to be equal. These claims are repeated as if they are natural and authentic. But no, they are based on the fear of difference and the desire to control others. A page 53 quote. Power over others is white identity in Aotearoa. A page 54 quote. That's the page after. Many Pākehā are reluctant to recognise their whiteness and their participation within what is a power structure based on the daily practice of dominance over others. That is, power over what I call new settlers, that white people call immigrants, especially brown and Asian ones, and of course Māori. They are seen and treated as not being one of us. In fact, Māori are the New Zealanders. The distinctive culture of this land is Māori, not by mainly English culture handed down by my ancestors. This brings me to my pet discussion about white people finding their ethnic and cultural identities. And this is a discussion, a conversation. I'm not saying this is black and white. This is about what I've been thinking about and thinking, how do we get out of this situation? How do we get out of this white block? How do we get out of being part of whiteness? And so my pet discussion about white people finding their ethnic and cultural identities. This is not about whiteness and dominance, but rather gaining awareness of our own cultural roots. My ethnicity is English. My ancestors are English, Irish Catholic and Welsh, but the English sort of dominated. They sort of took over, as we sort of know. As a sixth generation settler in Aotearoa, my cultural expressions are English. That's my culture. And I began to understand it even more clearly working in a kaupapa Māori organisation, was my pursuits and my life and their pursuits and their life. And I absolutely loved being in this organisation. This organisation has been fired by this government. I was part of whānau ora in the South Island, and we were an organisation. We were an exemplar that was supposed to be showing other government departments of how you work with whānau. And we were a commissioning agency that supported people into jobs, businesses that they decided upon, that they directed, that they got together, and we supported them. So English culture, as a sixth generation settler in Aotearoa, my cultural expressions are English. I'm not Māori. English culture dominated my Welsh and Irish Catholic ancestry. Surely that is no surprise for anyone who knows that the British Empire placed Englishmen as being the best race in the world, better than all those other white ones. And short note, there is no such thing as race, and that is all explained in my book. So, as an ethnic, I have more in common with my recent New Settler English neighbours than I do with my Māori, Chinese and Indian neighbours. My ethnicity, as I experience it, is English. My partner is Dutch. These differences are noticed on a daily basis. I think we white people need to be our ethnicity, or need to understand something about ethnicity and nestle down in amongst all the other ethnicities. And no, we are ethnic too. We are something. They are something, we are something. Not this white thing, this domination and power. It is my wish that new settlers, immigrants, be inducted into Māori culture and te tiriti rather than my Anglo-centric culture. However, we continue to act out the dominant white identity upon new settlers. Māori autonomy. When Māori displayed autonomy during the COVID-19 pandemic with roadblocks, the response from white people was vitriolic. A page 118 quote. White people feel threatened when they are not directing Māori, when Māori act independently and self-sufficiently. When white people clamour one law for all, that really signals we think we should be in control of you. Most of us know that dominance and controlling behaviour is unacceptable in private relationships, not to mention deliberate neglect and lack of protection from violence and violent outcomes. So, how many of us white people are clamouring for immediate change to the injustice that Māori are 11 times more likely to be imprisoned for the same crime as a white person? This is researched evidence. This is not some clueless politician's opinion. However, in the face of all this, I am not talking about utopia. We are all flawed. That is what it is to be human. I do not aspire to utopia. A pragmatic approach understands that existence is about negotiation on a daily basis. Oh, what did I just say? Oh, was that okay? And, you know, I think that's okay. It's okay to apologise, to be humble, to actually say, well, actually, I'm sorry about what I said. It can be as tiny as that. And there's all these ways that we can go about it. Actions, responses, understanding the situation, changing how we think it should have been dealt with or will be dealt with next time. So there is an alternative for us descendants of white settlers. We can choose to stand white and naked without our armour of myth, lie and control. We are uncomfortable, but actually we are free. And my research, 5 years of research for my PhD, people said to me, you must be so depressed with all that depressing stuff that you're reading about. And I said, no, I feel liberated. I feel liberated from ignorance. I feel like now I can actually navigate a way and advocate a way for things to get better or to be better, to talk to people and actually have more ammunition with which to interact with the things that they say that I don't agree with. So, yeah, it's liberating. This sort of stuff is liberating. Yeah, we can choose that naked. So, free. The knowledge we can acquire about the daily myths and lies is a different kind of power. It is a liberation from lying. It is the power of openness, sharing space and talking time with others, being humble and delighting in the well-being of others. We need to prioritise listening for the voices of whānau and community rather than prioritising property. Money is a means to an end that is about servicing the people, servicing public good. There are different ways of viewing the world. While there is no moral hierarchy that one viewpoint is better than another, although some people would think there is, there are white people who believe that their way of life is the universal best choice. This page 30 quote, change for white people means recognising Māori autonomy and ceasing to assume the white view of the world is correct, universal and rightfully dominant. Furthermore, Māori resources, the resources of Aotearoa, are not for the highest bidder at the hands of a white auctioneer that is this government. Page 95 quote, Māori are the collateral damage of the Pākehā plunder of land and resources into the present day. I mean, it was only 2004 that we had conversation of the foreshore and seabed and that attempt, and it got sort of pushed back eventually. But yeah, it's around us, and you know, gifted land that was gifted for schools or police stations or whatever, and then suddenly it's been sold off to the private sector, stuff like that, rather than given back to the people who gifted it when it was no longer needed for the purpose that it was gifted for by Māori in that area. So Māori are the collateral damage of the Pākehā plunder of land and resources into the present day. Excuse me, a page 115 quote. The reduction of everything to a price within a system focused on property has become more important than upholding the care and best practice nurturing of human relationships and the world around us. There is enough to go round, and there is a point where one has sufficient. However, there are those people who aspire to live like the gentry, and for many who to live like a celebrity. However, I have no admiration for wealth. For me, it does not equate with goodness or success in the good old-fashioned Puritan way. The Puritans believed they would have more love from God the harder they worked and the more material wealth they accumulated. So it was a great individualistic desire for the love of God that came out of Calvinism and spread across into Scotland to the Knox. And it was very much the foundation of thinking in Aotearoa. When I read Weber, I can't remember the title. Can anyone remember it, about the myth, the Puritan, something about the Puritans? It was like he was speaking about my upbringing. It was really amazing. Yeah. As a fundamentalist Christian, the Prime Minister quite likely believes this, as he is quite chuffed about being sorted. Remember? Yeah. So he's into accumulative materialism and how good that is and how well he's done. Page 143. We remain the pawns of those who put money ahead of looking after all people. We need to find value in simple things shared with others, as did many people like myself post-earthquake in Christchurch. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was people and our relationships with others that were so important then as they still are now. And we must not let ourselves get divided from that kotahitanga with others. So we have to be really careful that we avoid infighting and that we know where our focus for change is. It's not about putting down someone else in your organisation. So yeah, it's really important that we stand strong together as with the importance of our relationships and the importance of each other. So if we are going to contribute to change that is inclusive, we must fight for te tiriti within all legislation, planning and social interactions. This coalition government is focused on its wealthy party donors, the privatisation of public assets and upholding white supremacist structures. And remember, you do not have to be white to support these white supremacist structures. This is clearly evident within the three coalition parties. So I look at who makes up those parties and I'm going, why? Why are you in that party? I don't understand it. Yet the Labour Party is also problematic. Look back at the mandate they had in 2017 election to make significant change, and they did not do it. A capital gains tax and the amazing revenue that it would have brought in for the urgently required public spending on hospitals and infrastructure. Wellington requires a huge input from central government to deal with its issues, its bursting pipes that happen. Well, we're always reading about it, aren't we? Were Labour fearful of the white voter bloc that upholds white supremacy? Did this white voter bloc deter significant change that would have benefited Māori? So this whole thing about all the voters, we must make sure we keep them in for the next election, and that kind of dominates. So this white voting bloc that we must deconstruct ourselves from. From my research, I would say yes, the Labour Party was influenced by whether they would lose the white voter bloc. My book exists to support you in your understanding of banal, everyday racisms that are white ideology, whiteness. My book provides information and references to go to for further evidence that contributes towards filling gaps and helping you to respond to racism within yourself when it bubbles up, and as expressed by others, especially politicians, local body representatives, and media personalities. Co-governance, identifying our ethnic selves, equity, being woke, which means awake, not dead or asleep, are all words and aspects we should embrace without the crippling fear-mongering by certain sections of society. So yes, I am woke. I am awake and aware. I'm not asleep or dead. I finish with this page 29 quote. The status quo of injustice in Aotearoa is that non-Māori are mainly not bicultural. For the bright, sharing future of Aotearoa, that has to change. Toi tū te tiriti. I look forward to answering your questions after the break. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And for any of you, because I'm not saying you have to, because some stuff is dense in reading and it's not for you. You know, you only read it because you're trying to get somewhere in a specific way. But if you're interested in a black critique of Marxism, Cedric Robertson, he's a very old-fashioned writer. I think it was published in the 60s. He is someone to follow up, and it was really interesting. And also his bibliography leads you on to other black writers, which is really interesting. Akile Bibi, as that is pronounced, Bibi, he does stuff on whiteness. And Ruth Frankenberg, she has a really interesting book on white fragility. So that's just if you want to follow up more on that thing. So, kia ora.
Well, that was fascinating. Thank you, Lizzie. I took a few notes. Lots and lots of parallels from my own PhD that I finished last year, and particularly I was thinking about, you talk about, owning our whiteness, or kind of, acknowledging our whiteness. And one of the things that I talked about was becoming consciously Pākehā, i.e. being aware of who we are, our power, our privilege, being culturally humble, which is one of the things that you talked about, acknowledging our history and how we got here and how we are who we are here, located in this land. So it was fascinating. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I wrote this down, the private pursuit of bliss produces cruelty. And I just thought that's such a absolute, it's just such a great summary of the neoliberal individual pursuit of my own private pleasure, and to hell with everybody else, which, that whole dominant, that has just so taken over our narrative, our white narrative. Yeah. So, and the other couple of just reflections from me about, yes, we must be aware of our whiteness, but we must also act. Like that was a big theme that I heard you talk about acknowledging change, the need for action, that guilt is an immobil. I talk about guilt as being an immobilizing emotion, but your rabbit in headlights is a great way of explaining that. We have no place for white guilt, no place for white fragility. Anyway, that was cool, eh? So I'm sure you've got lots of questions, and all the peeps are hanging around with pens and paper. So let's, if we could make 5 minutes or so, a few minutes to, if you've got a question, put your hand up, or people will just come around, hand out a piece of paper, and then they'll come up here and we'll give them to Elizabeth to answer. Awesome. Okay, kia ora everybody. We might get going with the questions. We've got a few, so we may not get a chance to get all of them done, but we're going to give it a good go. So I'm just going to hand over to Agnes, who's with Network Waitangi, and Agnes is going to read out our questions. And mostly Elizabeth's going to answer.
Oh.
Okay, kia ora, Lizzie.
I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay, kia ora, Lizzie. Thank you for your presentation, and we'll start with this question about solipsism.
Yep.
Is that what neoliberals like David Seymour promote?
Pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in his own bubble. Like today, he said that thing about farmers. Butter, it's good that butter is so expensive because it's supporting farmers. He doesn't care about farmers. He'd sell their land from under their feet to the highest bidder from overseas. He's just saying that for votes. He's just saying that as a smokescreen for what do we know what he's up to? You know? What's he cooking up? He's saying this stuff. It's a smokescreen. Oh.
Yeah.
It's where...
For those of us that don't have a PhD.
It's like the paedophile who thinks what I'm doing is okay. This is... It's like the psychopath too. This is my world. It's for me. I'm doing well. Everything's okay. They've got a problem? Shut up. Like they don't care about consent. They don't care about whether the object is happy. It's all about them. So solipsism is that incredible and it justifies it. And Nabokov is such an amazing writer because the solipsist justifies their experience because experience can only be what they have experienced. So if they experience it, it's right. What anyone else says is well, I don't know about that because I don't know about that. That it's, yeah, so it's, but if you Google that word, it's, yeah. Yeah, I had to keep, some of these words, I have to keep going back to them, yeah. But it's a lovely word. It's enough, like try and say it really fast before you do solipsism.
Okay, so the next question is about ethnicity versus whiteness.
Yes.
Okay, so is it necessary to give up your ethnicity to be white? And they give an example, i.e. Irish or Italian migrants were not considered white in USA until the 1930s. Mm. And today Hispanics are not considered white. Mm. Mm. So please clarify ethnicity versus whiteness.
While a certain person might say he's got whakapapa Māori, so what? He acts white. His thinking is white. His performance in the world, he wants us all to be white. That's what he means by equal. So, yeah, I think ethnicity is a word that's sort of like, oh, we don't want tribalism. We don't want people identifying and having differences and causing rifts because these differences have to be sorted. So being white is like a cure-all. It's like, yes, let's all be white. Then the problem's solved. It's a universal thing. You pass as white if you've got whakapapa something else. You might pass as white. But America went through a series of that. With each wave of immigrants, there were always the ones that weren't part of the great American dream. And then they became part of and then they did it to the next lot, which might have been Polish people or whatever. So, and we did it, like someone was saying today, about throwing stones at Norwegian kids. That a family that came into Norwood, they experienced being called you Scandi dogs, dirty Scandi dogs. That was what they were called. So, and it was because their eyes were too blue and they were too white and they were something that they weren't like the locals. Yeah. So, yeah. So we do it to whoever comes. We did it to the Dutch too, actually. We didn't like them because they worked in weekends. And we didn't like that. That didn't fit in with our way of life in the 50s.
Okay, thanks, Lizzie. This is a question about land use. Exotic forest cover is increasingly exponentially destroying soil biology and ecosystems for generations to come. What steps can a white do to curb this?
Yes. Well, there is the issue around slag, isn't there? What's it called? The slash. Yeah, and its role in destruction. And there's also the issue of safety, the lack of safety practices within the forest. There's so many deaths that happen in the industry. So I think one form of control over these foreign companies is that if it becomes too economically expensive for them to be a safer practice and to have to deal with their slash, they may not want to be part of forests here. So that is, I think, making these companies more accountable to what the rules are about worker safety, that's union work, and environmental. Like, why didn't the forestry companies pay for the fixing of the bridges in Waio and those areas? Because they didn't, did they? No. So I think we are letting those companies just run amok, really. Oh, look, that word's come up again tonight. Amok. What is it? A-M-O-K.
Run amok.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one thing.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of micros and macros, globalisation and neoliberal agendas and policies to white people are like colonisation is to Māori, or corporate colonisation to white people is like classical colonisation is to Māori. Do you think if white people recognised our shared colonising risk, that Māori and mainstream citizens have this in common, it might inspire more collaboration?
Yeah, I think if you understand what exploitation feels like, that's possibly relevant. But I actually think the critical thing for white people in Aotearoa is recognising Māori autonomy and sovereignty. I think it's a very simple thing, and I think that's when I think we can come home to this land. That, like, while I feel that Aotearoa is my home, and I will never, in my lifetime, I think I will never be an owner. I think down the track somewhere there is going to be a sense that white people belong here, that this is their home, in a much deeper sense. When I did my master's in spirituality, I worked with 43 people who no longer believed in God, aged between 93 and 20, and I interviewed them about their spirituality, and very few of them related to the land. Very few. There was only a couple that talked about the land, and I was shocked. I had this assumption that white people by now would be turning to Māori gods, as I sort of do. I love the stories of the land and how the land was formed, and even when working with dance students, we would do things like tectonic plates moving, and this is children in schools, with dance stuff and theatre stuff, and using ideas about the land, about volcanoes and about how things, and you have these Māori heroes who go through the landscape and they're digging something out and they're doing this and they're doing that, and that represents someone's wife and that represents someone's child. Where were we? I'm getting carried away. What are we talking about?
Speaking of, shall I repeat the question?
Yeah.
Speaking of micros and macros, globalisation.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you. Yeah, no, I think the core thing is we have to recognise Māori sovereignty, and then we will be, I think, more settled. I actually think at the moment we are still unsettled, and I think that's a discomfort that we have to accept that we're going through. We're unsettled, and I don't think we should stress about it. I just think it's this time in history. It's a transition phase. I think, well, everything's a transition phase, isn't it? Look, I'm heading towards, and but for me, the core thing is people go overseas wearing a pounamu necklace, but they can't even do the haka properly, and they actually have voted for a particular political party that creates obstacles for Māori. So, and that's pretty much most of the political parties. So I think that's the crucial nub. And if you understand exploitation, then you'll have more empathy with Māori, I think. Yeah.
What are your views on white saviour complex?
Good on them. I don't know. White saviours. Yeah. Do you have any views on white saviours?
Yeah. One of the things that came up when I was doing my study was the difference between having a white saviour complex and developing an ethic of service. So a white saviour still embodies having power and privilege over and wanting to come in and control, as you talk about, Elizabeth, and fix the Māoris, fix the problem, because they're driven out of ego. They're driven out of that wanting to. So they may have some reflection or some knowledge, some awareness about things need to change, but they haven't really taken on deeply what it means, where they are in their own whiteness or their own enactment of racism, really. Whereas the people that I talked to in my study talked about being humble and being aware of their own ego and thinking about how they could be of service to a Māori-led agenda, which goes back to what you were just talking about in terms of habit. The first part of that is accepting that Māori have sovereignty over Aotearoa.
And that it's not threatening.
Yeah.
Like so many people think that's threatening. There's a word that I'm allergic to, and that's empower, because we don't empower anybody. You are driven. You drive yourself, and I might give you money to help you drive yourself, to help you get to where you want to get, which was the commissioning agency that I worked for, the whānau agency that I worked for. We don't empower people. People are enabled by being supported, but and also I understood it as you can't give mana to someone else. They have their own mana, that they stand within their own mana. They get diminished by practices and attitudes, but you can't take that off them. So it's something to do with, that I don't like that word empower. And so I was always, as an editor at my organisation, I was always crossing it out of people's writing and substituting it. And there was always another word that could be substituted there, like enable or support, or So I would often thesis Google it, thesaurus Google. No, look up the thesaurus to find other words that suited that paragraph and that particular person's writing. Yeah.
If New Zealand had an empowering civics curriculum, if New Zealand had an empowering civics curriculum, including critical thinking around our history, human rights, civic duties, etc., we could have a powerful new generation of New Zealanders within 5 years. How realistic is such an aspiration, and how can we make that happen faster? And it then goes, #youth hold the key.
I had a French flatmate in 2009, and she was shocked. She was a French teacher at Papanui High in Christchurch, and she was also my French teacher in an evening class. And she was a young woman, she was 25, but she was shocked that Aotearoa didn't have education like that for young people. Like the equivalent French student in the sixth form was getting that kind of education in critical thinking and civic law. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think it's a realistic aspiration?
Yeah. And this emphasis on STEM is just so wrong because, well, of course I'm in the arts, so I see huge relevance for participation in the arts, all the arts. Yeah. And of course, you know, people who go to medical school, they're often amazing musicians. So, our attitude to education there's also an issue that this is historic, that once universities were about thinking, they weren't about applied training for jobs. And now we've got that awkward thing that we've got things in university that are about applied training for jobs, but they're not about critical thinking. Yeah, so that's what Polytechs used to be. They were applied trainings for jobs. So yeah, I think it's really possible to have that sort of thing in education. Yeah.
When a group of Pākehā men, when in a group of Pākehā men a racist comment is made, how do I react in a way that leads to change?
I think sometimes just being blunt, you know, like, well, actually, I don't agree with that. It could be just a passing small comment. Yeah, mate, actually, I don't really agree with that. And it doesn't have to go into a full-blown why or anything like that. It's just that you haven't participated in a group, what would you call it? Ickiness, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what about just what makes you think that?
Yeah. Yeah, what makes you think that? That's actually really good, because then they have to say something. Yeah, and then they put their foot in it probably a bit more.
Yeah.
And look an idiot in front of the others, yeah.
And if you can be brave enough, I think it is, you can call out, that is a really racist comment.
Yeah, although sometimes that really gets, you know,
Yes, but
those
I
words
don't,
are like, yeah, I know.
Sometimes I think we have to realise that we aren't going to change those people in that moment.
No.
But
Yeah.
we cannot, it would be good if we did not participate in the racism.
Yeah.
Because to be anti-racist means to act.
Yeah.
And if you're in a situation like that and it happens and you don't say anything, then you are complicit with the racism.
Exactly.
So, however, you know, sometimes it's not safe to say anything or too difficult, but I think if people can say something, to name it and claim it is important.
Yep.
And it may be that you don't change them, but you might, you've made a stand, and you don't know who might overhear it or who else is there. All those, yeah.
Kia ora. Please elaborate on actions to move white privilege when one is challenged or uncomfortable with it.
Can you read that again?
Please elaborate on actions to move white privilege when one is challenged or uncomfortable with it.
I think you can't move white privilege until you realise you have it. So, when one of the things that some white people say is that they're not privileged at all, like they could be poor, experience hardship in many manner of ways that our society discriminates and discriminates against people. But for white people in Aotearoa, they will never experience racism. They will never, they are privileged simply because of that. So I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Yeah, I think you have. And what I would add to that is that the white working class has pretty much never been real buddies with blacks in America, and definitely Māori aren't that keen on unions in Aotearoa. Like when my workplace finished, there were only 3 of us who belonged to a union, and we've got a redundancy issue going on. But 2 of us were Pākehā and 1 was Indian, And no, none of the Māori that I worked with were part of the PSA. What am I getting at? That white workers have always sided with their white employers against the brown or black other. And there was something that you said that fed into that. Privilege. So skin is a property. White skin was a property that black or brown people didn't have, and it was in common with the employer, and that was more important than arguments for better wages. So when the white working class, this is especially in the States, when the white working class aligned with the white employer, that enabled the white employer to keep wages down. So that whole racism issue has backfired upon the white working class in the States.
Within the present coalition, there is open hostility and action towards our Te Tiriti partners. From your research, does this behaviour accurately represent the majority of Pākehā voters, or has this government made a mistake?
I think it has brought out from the woodwork all the little wiggly creatures that had very dark thoughts. And it's that underbelly, it's a very disgusting underbelly in Aotearoa that's incredibly misogynist and and racist. And they are representatives. They got voted by those people. And then there's a whole lot of people who are just like, they don't really know whether it's dark or light, really. Politically, they're very naive and they just vote because, it'd be nice to have a change. Or, I got sick of just hearing about Jacinda all the time. Their reasons for voting are pretty wishy-washy. So, I don't know, have you got anything to add to?
My only thought really is that we live in a global world, and obviously with Trump is enabling racism, and that enabling of racism is happening here too, from our leaders.
I'm just going to squeeze in one
Or
more.
our elected politicians. I'm not
Actually,
that's not to call them our leaders.
One more, Lizzie. How can we be woke without sounding superior?
Just the sheer grittiness of it. I'm woke. I didn't sound superior then. It was like joyous. I'm woke.
Okay.
So I'm awake and aware. What about you?
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Nice.
you. Kia ora. Thank you, Lizzie.
So I think there might have been a few left, but we, not too many. Can we finish with this one? Lizzie, where do you see the signs of hope in Aotearoa today?
The philosopher Rorty, he changed, faith, hope and charity. He changed it into solidarity, contingency, irony and solidarity. So faith, hope, contingency, irony. So irony was his replacement for hope. And with irony, he wasn't talking about ironic statements. He was talking about, with contingency, life is out of your control. Life rolls on despite whatever. So 1/3 of our life is about luck. Irony is about an attitude towards life that he rejected hope because he thought hope was too expectant of something being delivered. And what if it doesn't get delivered? So do you lose hope? So hope is based on something being delivered, and he thinks we shouldn't be living expecting something to be delivered. We should be kind of living life with irony. And so if you want to know more about that, because I'm failing to really explain it to you, I would suggest you read his book, which is called Contingency, Irony and Solidarity. It's a really good book by Richard Rorty, American philosopher. Yeah. And solidarity, I loved his word solidarity, replacing charity, because charity is really a gesture of, I'm rich, but nothing's going to change, but I'll give some money to you, you poor you, but I won't change the system. Whereas solidarity is about us changing the system. Yeah, and what I talked about in my speech, kōtahitanga. Yeah. Yeah, Richard Rorty, irony, solidarity, contingency, irony and solidarity. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Lizzie. That wasn't quite the answer I was expecting, but it was a fabulous answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of the session tonight. There's still cups of tea and soup and lots of sustenance still to be had, as well as, I'm sure, some more ongoing kōrero with Elizabeth. Before we close, I just want to make a note of, I've talked about our upcoming workshops, but we also have a Mātiki Mai reading group that we have. All of the information for that is up on the back table. Please sign up to our newsletter, and most importantly, this is one of 4 sessions, and the next one I'm really excited about is it's Wednesday, they're every Wednesday, July the 30th, and we've got Cheryl Mai, Mike Kake and Carol Peters, who are 3 locals who are going to share their experience around Māori wards, and we really encourage you to come along, but also tell your friends and family about that. I think that's going to be a great conversation, because of course that is the next fight on the agenda, isn't it, about keeping, or as much as we can, Māori wards. So I have got, I've got a gift for you. Or we've got a gift for you. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Look at that. Oh, someone special might have made that.
Wow.
Sure. Thank you so much for tonight, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
What an incredibly intellectual, stimulating conversation, and you pulled no punches and you kind of set it straight, and I love that. And just, really enjoyed that interrogation of being white, and and the call to act. Actually, that is one thing, thinking about what it is to be white, but actually what are we going to do about it? Right? Yeah. So thank you so much. So just join me in thanking. We can thank Elizabeth the traditional way, and then we're going to sing a song. But thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. This is beautiful.
Yeah. And this is the song that Network Waitangi, we're just learning, because someone, they said to us, well, I sing songs when I do my treaty workshops, but this is a song that the group is learning to sing, which has been written by one of our members, Leah, who is Val's daughter. So we're going to sing you a song.
Thank you.
And I'm going to get on here because you don't want me up on the stage singing. And yes, please join in, because we're going to repeat it several times. But you need to take my mic off. Thanks.
stand strong, stand together, where we belong, stand together, where we belong.
Kia ora mai. The words stand up, stand strong, stand together. That's really a lot of the invitation that Lizzie has given us tonight, even if it means being uncomfortable together and doing something about it, acting. So the final karakia is picking up the same thing of solidarity, unity together. Whakamaua te kōrero, whakamaua te wānanga, whakamaua kia ranginui e tui o nei, whakamaua kia papatua nuku takutaka ake nei, whakatina ki te tumu o te maramatanga, whakatina kia tina, homie, huie, tākie. Kia ora mai tātou. Thanks, Lizzie.
What brought you out here tonight?
I'm very interested in learning and always learning more about te tiriti and racism and what I can do about it. And so anything that Network Waitangi puts on, it gives me a great opportunity to learn a bit more.
And what did you get from tonight? What have you taken away?
Well, I thought she was really brave, normalising discussion about white supremacy, which is, is the truth. It is what is happening, and it is real. And so it was really refreshing to hear someone brave enough to actually just say that. So I thought it was really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. What brought you out here tonight?
Well, I just think it's important for all of us to learn more and to not despair with what's happening at the moment, because despair is a useless emotion, and because we do all need to act, I think knowledge is power, and to find out how to stand together. And like you were saying, the most important thing is to recognise sovereignty, but also to recognise ourselves and how we are living with privilege as Pākehā or Tauri every day, and understand how we can actually use that to change in our own lives, in our own situations, and work together to change in the macro sort of culture as well. So each of the sessions is so interesting, and I think if people actually go and to look on the websites and on all the available social medias to see what has actually been spoken about in each of these sessions. They're all so rich, they're so helpful, and engaging in solidarity is something that we can do as individuals to take a breath, fill a kite to go back into the fight together.
What brought you out here tonight?
I've been 35 years in Aotearoa, and I just feel to be part of this land I need to understand Māori as well. I need to have a relationship there, yeah. And so I need to know more about it. Yeah.
And what's your biggest takeaway from the talk?
I was just saying building a relationship, because without relationship you can't have those other conversations that need to be had. So I think that's where I got through tonight. Yeah, building relationships. Yeah.
I'm here tonight in the context of what's been happening in our country, particularly in the last year, with the Treaty Principles Bill and this whole stirring up of everything that's been happening, good, bad and ugly. And as a Pākehā, I've got to the position now of, what do I do? I know, I'm aware, but what's my next pace for action? And along with a few of my friends, we're trying to discern that at the moment. Protest, march with, speak, yes, all that. But there's something more, and so it's a bit of the search for the more as we continue to accompany Māori on this journey under Te Tiriti.
And what's your biggest takeaway?
I think it's still that white privilege carries a responsibility if we want to really make some significant change in New Zealand. Being a white male, means that carries a responsibility.